I saved tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of lives by putting
time that you bought. The argument is that you bought yourself some time. You didn't use it to prepare hospitals. You didn't use it to ramp up testing. Right now, nearly 20 million people
disgraceful.
are unemployed.
It's so disgraceful the way you said it. Let me just listen. I just went over it.
Or this rant supposed to make people feel
I just went
confident
over
in
it.
an unprecedented crisis.
Nobody thought we should do it, and when I did it,
But what did you do with the time that you bought?
you know
The
we
month
did.
of February. That
You know what we
video
did?
was a gap.
What do
The
you
entire
do?
month of February.
What do you do when you have no case in the whole United States?
You had cases
When
in February.
excuse me, you reported it. 0 cases, 0 deaths on January 17th.
January, February, the entire
January,
month of
I said in
February. Your video
January.
has a complete gap.
On
Month of
January
February.
30th.
What did your administration do in February with the time that your travel ban bought
A
you?
lot,
What?
a lot. And in fact, we'll give you a list. What we did, in fact, part of it was up there. We
wasn't
did a
the
lot.
video, the video had a gap.
Look. You know you're a fake. You know that. Your whole network, the way you cover it, is fake.
Let's look at it this way. If you're going to do a show and you're going to base it on comedy, you may as well go ahead and start out with at least a full minute of comedy just to do it. I mean, is there anything better than laughing at what's gone on in Washington, D.C. the last 4 years? I mean, this is, well, okay, you don't even have to have a cover charge with this, though I do think there needs to be a 2-drink minimum. Hi, once again, everybody. I'm Ed Berliner. Welcome in. The Free-for-All kicks off once again live. Well, live at this point, but of course you may be watching it somewhere else down the road. Once everything is done, everything is posted on YouTube. It's up on the audio podcasts. You can listen to it, view it, send it along to your favorite friends, do whatever you want. Give us at least 3 million viewers. We'll love you, we'll kiss you, we'll caress you. Only in this way. I'm not going to do it physically because my lawyers aren't nearly that good. Later on, we're going to be joined by our special guest, investigative journalist and author Diane Dimond is going to be here. And of course, we always try to add a little something to the show, some gravitas, if you will. But keep this in mind for the free-for-all. There are no rules. There is no censorship. There is no editing. Say anything. Well, you can't do anything because, there are certain things that if you do, then you've got to call your own lawyer. That's what I keep telling the guests. But no topics, nothing set. Everything is here. Also, if you'd like to, if you're watching us live on Twitter or Facebook, any one of the Facebook outlets, plus YouTube, if you'd like to go ahead and send in a text message, if you will, you can do that. We may not use it because, quite frankly, we're a hell of a lot more interesting than anybody else, and I like to say that because it makes everybody feel good. But you could get lucky and be part of it. So there you go. There's all the rules, and aside from that, there are no rules, no fooling. My guest today on the panel, and I have to come up with a much better word than panel, because panel has been polluted these days by Fox, MSNBC, CNBC, OANN, Newsmax, and all the rest of the hacks. So I've got to come up with a better phrase than just panel. The gang, if you will. Let's do that. First one up is an old dear friend of mine. We worked together a zillion years ago when it was actually Real News in South Florida. We were both the sports guys on WCIX Channel 6 in Miami. He left, and thank God, he was the smart one. He got out of sports and went to news, won a spitload of Emmys in New York, and now he's in Hawaii. What the hell was I doing wrong this whole time? You know, come on, guy had it knocked, for crying out loud. He gets it right. I love him for that, too. John Dutzman, live all the way from Hawaii, who is now known as Johnny Tsunami. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's Johnny Tsunami. That the locals gave me that name sarcastically, I believe. I bodyboard every day. But I also gave myself a subtitle, The World's Most Mediocre Bodyboarder, which, if growing up, if you remember, we had Zamfir, the world's greatest musician who played the pan flute in commercials, and he had his own title. And then there was Professor Irwin Corey, who was the world's greatest authority. So I believe everybody needs a subtitle, and that's my subtitle.
You are going to be in the history of this show, no matter whether we do it one more day or 1,000 years. I swear, you're going to be the only person who ever brings Zamfir into the whole discussion.
Yeah.
Very nicely done. I never asked you this, but do you have a pan flute?
We won't get into my personal life, but as far as the instrument goes, no. But if you remember Carson, that was a big deal on Carson. Zamfir was a topic of Carson. I think he played Zamfir a few times.
Oh God, we could.
I mean, if you give yourself a title, a subtitle, like the world's greatest musician. That guy sold millions of records, by the way, I believe, just with the subtitle. And he played a pan flute. He played like basic hits with a pan flute, a wooden flute.
I'm telling you, when it comes down to it, you're going to be the only one who will ever talk about the pan flute. Guaranteed that. We'll get into that as the show goes on a little bit later on. So John joins us here. My next guest, because the other thing that we try to do with this show on every basis is we have an entertainer or a comedian, a professional comedian, which means we do not bring in anybody who's been elected to office. Because if you're right now working in Washington, D.C., you're not a professional comic, you're an amateur. And you do need that 2-drink minimum and that cover charge. And I keep telling people, I'm not a comedian, I just play one on TV. So I bring in the professionals because I'd much rather hear from them instead of having to go back and forth. Get in your chair, young man. I can see you. You don't know that, but I can see you in the green room. So don't you dare move, for crying out loud. He has been on television. He has worked in movies. He works the clubs nationally. It is a pleasure to welcome L.A. Hardy into the show today. L.A.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
There he is.
Let me just say this as an addendum to what John was saying, and that is that Zamfir was not only a pan flute player, he was the self-proclaimed master of the pan flute.
Yeah, master and the world's greatest musician, I believe, too. So
absolutely,
absolutely, excellent.
How dare I even think that? And so, if LA, if you think, and if for whatever reason down the line in your career you decide to bring in a pan flute, I get 10%.
10%.
I get 10% right off and well, wait a minute. John gets 20%. I get 10.
I don't know what 10% of a pan flute would be.
Well, but if you put it in the show and you sell tickets, come on, look. Damn it, this is the media, for crying out loud. John will tell you this. Anybody who's ever worked in television, you're a sucker. You want everything free that you can possibly get. You know, you never turn it down. So if there's a possibility to make a buck, we're going to make a buck.
Yes, our mutual friend Bernie Rosen, God bless him, rest his soul, was the master of free food. He was the greatest, for those who don't know him, greatest sports producer in the history of the world.
He was indeed.
And he always got free food. Always. And always made sure that I got free food.
And remember, that is the most important thing for getting free food. Our featured guest, Diane Dimond, is going to join us at the bottom of the hour. So when she comes in, I guarantee you that one of the questions I will be is, you too, like everybody else, we made sure that, come on, there's a buffet spread somewhere, because we had to be ready for that, okay? So here we go. Let's start things off because we want to make sure that we get everything. And again, this is the free-for-all. This is anything and everything that's sitting here. So, gentlemen, I'm going to give you a chance to start here. I screwed up again for the second show in a row. I usually bring in a quarter or a coin to flip to see who goes first. So I have no coins sitting here in the studio. I'm honest to God. So, well, no. I'm going to do it this way. This is the technical way to do it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This is an information card. That's heads. That's tails.
All right.
So, seeing as John, you're my old friend, I'm going to give you the chance to go first. Heads or tails?
Heads.
Heads. It is a tail.
Woo!
It is a tail. Mr. Hardy, you go first. So here you go, LA. Start off the free-for-all. What's on your mind? Go.
Wow.
Pressure's on, brother.
I saw today they're going to have the first all-women's announcing team for a baseball game in about a week or so, I believe it is. In the booth, on the field, play-by-play and color. That was announced, I think, today or yesterday. What do you think? All women.
Well, okay. Why? I'm just out of curiosity's sake. Does that bother you? Are you a sports fan? Are you a baseball fan?
I was a baseball player. I was a baseball fan. I am just curious as to I don't know.
What's yours? Go. What's yours? How do you feel about an all-female announcing team?
I ain't got enough women in my house. I don't need an all-female announcing baseball. That's why I'm watching baseball for me personally. But you
realize, of course, that now you're opening the door and you're going to get sued. It's going to happen sooner or later. It's just the way things happen here. John, you and I did sports for a lot of years. We always had the play-by-play announcers. What do you think then about an all-female baseball announcing team?
Hey, if they're good, God bless them. I grew up as a Mets fan with
I'm
the
sorry.
with the most bizarre cast of characters, including Ralph Kiner, my all-time hero, and Bob Murphy, who I actually worked with later on at a football game, and then Rizzuto with the Yankees, and all of these people were just characters and engaging and funny, and
Right, right.
as long as they meet that my standard, which that stuff is gone. I don't watch a lot of live sports anymore because of that. But if it's just like if it's forced, like oh, we have to
No.
have token female announcers to be politically correct, and then they're not good. I'm sure they're probably pretty good. I hope they are.
Well, but see, but you brought a word into this that I think we got to bring in, and you brought in token, because a lot of
Right.
times in sports they bring in token athletes, the guys or the gals who played the sports, and they bring them in as the color announcers, and they suck. They're terrible.
That was one of Cosell's biggest things that he would go off on.
Well, he
know,
called
like,
it a jockocracy. I don't
You know,
give a
the thing
damn.
I think that you said that made the most sense to me was the word character. And
Yeah.
even if they're good, and that's great, and I hope they are, that's what's missing to me in sports that I enjoyed was a sportscaster, Harry Carey. This guy, I mean, he was
Right.
a character. He brought something more than just announcing the game that made you want to
Right.
watch the game. And to me, that's kind of what's missing, whether it's a male or a female. But just
Well,
to
but you
bring in
see-
females, just kind of to me, where's that character that you're bringing in?
Well, what you're talking about here now, though, is in sports. I love it how this show, just because of my background, it always rolls into sports to start with. What you're talking about now is all the announcers in every sport, and John will back me up on this. He knows this. All the announcers now, they're paid by the team. They're no longer announcers. They're homers. They're marketers. They're salesmen and saleswomen. It's all they have to do. Because John Sterling, who I'll pass on this. I'm not really a fan of John Sterling, but all he is, he's a salesman for the New York Yankees. He's there to sell the team, and when he criticizes the team, you better believe that he does that, and he has the full backing of the organization behind him, and he knows what he can and cannot say. Because if you go too far, they'll jack him out of there in a heartbeat. Because
Well,
it's
but-
all about selling tickets.
Well, there were some natural homers though. That the greatest of all time, who I developed a relationship with, was Johnny Most, who was the Celtics announcer.
What's the
matter with you,
John? You all right, John? You okay?
I mean, and he was a homer to the extent that he needed armed guards to take a piss at when he went to Detroit, because he would go off on, oh, the dirty, rotten scoundrels in that city. Dennis
The same
Rodman
was
on a
true.
hot dog, but it was not like, oh, you're getting paid as a shill for the Celtics. He was just naturally a shill for the Celtics, and he was also technically one of the best play-by-play guys, which is also missing because Johnny would always tell you what was going on in the game and not ramble on about some nonsense. Johnny would, there's Bird, 2 points, Celtics up by 4. 96-92 Celtics. Always.
Well, but you
Always. And
used
nobody
another
does
word
that
which is
anymore.
good. You used the word shill. And that's what announcers are these days. And even at the network level, it's a little bit less they can get away with it. But if you're doing a local game, you're a shill for the team because your paycheck comes from that team. And if you slap on them too hard, or if you knock them down too hard, or if you piss off one of the players and they get back into management's face, you're going to get slapped. You're going to lose your job. So that's, and look, there's going to be a lot of guys and gals are going to watch this and they're going to hammer away at this and say, wait a minute, Ed, I do a very good job and I'm fair. And there are announcers out there. And every time I brought this up on my social media pages, there's a great friend of mine from South Florida. I won't mention his name. He hammers away at me on Facebook every time. He says, how dare you say that? That's not true. We're fair. You're still getting paid by the team. And if you cross that line, they will fire you because there is no such thing as fair. Last guy I saw it with, and John may remember this too, was a guy named Rick Weaver, who was the...
Yeah, I remember Rick, yeah.
Rick Weaver was the play-by-play announcer of the Miami Dolphins. He was the second one. He's original. Rick told it like he spit right out there how bad the players were playing, and he never got fired for it. He'd never last in today's position.
I
So
think
LA,
they all required.
LA, I got an idea. How about a comic on the baseball play-by teams? How about a comic every single time on one of these shows and one of these games? Let's put a comedian in there. Why
Well, you
not?
remember Billy Crystal was on Monday Night Football for a little while.
Yes.
And
Didn't they try somebody else on Monday Night Football too? I forgot. It was
Rush Limbaugh.
no,
No.
Dennis Miller or somebody. Don't you
Yeah,
remember?
Dennis Miller was on for a while too.
Yeah, they had
Yeah.
Dennis Miller on for a while,
That was
and Dennis
painful.
Miller was actually terrible, and I love him as a
Yeah, that
comic,
was painful.
but he just
He was
wasn't good
too
either.
deep. He was way too deep with his
Way
humor.
too deep. He's always was too deep. All right. So LA's had his shot. John, here we go. Diane Diamond's going to join us here in a little while. So here you go. Free for all.
What?
Your shot. No filter. No censorship. Go.
And I think the voter suppression that's hidden right now is going to be conducted by the virus, because my degree is not in broadcasting; it's in public health and health education. I've been watching this COVID thing from day one, and right now what's going on here is that the COVID is ripping through the available targets, which are people who are not vaccinated. And then if you take these stats further, you see, I saw recently that 23% of Republicans who are not vaccinated said they're not going to get vaccinated. That's pure and simple. So whatever that number works out to be, and it's got to be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, are leaving themselves vulnerable. And there will be, as harsh as it sounds, there will be people, because of their political affiliation or their admiration for some of these crazy politicians, and they're crazy on both sides, who will die because they don't want to get a shot. Which is absurd at this point. I understand people being resistant in the beginning, but there's billions of doses, 3.5 billion doses administered right now around the world. The odds of dying as of June from COVID after getting the double dose or fully vaccinated is 0.005%, 0.005. So, I mean, get your shot. And I think the most stupid, asinine decision is to make a health decision based on your politics, or the advice of like complete imbeciles like My Pillow Guy or Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm so happy I'm 5,000 miles away from these idiots who are now idolized by mutual idiots. But this will actually kill people. And if you remember back during COVID, when it was kicking into high gear, all these deathbed confessions like, oh, I guess this is real, as they're taking their last breath. Oh, what a discovery. They're going to have the same thing. What the hell is the matter with people? Why are they
It's a weed
so
out process.
Well,
It's a
it is.
weed out
It's a
process.
Darwin's theory.
It's a weed out process.
Well, yeah, I've had people get into a conversation over this, and many people have said this is just a culling of the herd. If you're going to be if you're going to be that stupid, you might die. But the issue is not.
And politically speaking, that's where the stupidity is. If these people are trying to decide whether they're going to get vaccinated or not based on their political affiliation, bye-bye. See ya. Bye-bye.
Yeah, but the biggest problem is in all this, if somebody of any political affiliation decides, it doesn't matter, or none, doesn't make a difference. If they decide they're not going to get vaccinated and they get sick and then they pass it on to somebody else, there's a possibility they will kill somebody else. And the
won't be me. I'm vaccinated.
Well, but see, wait a minute. The New York Yankees are vaccinated. They've got 3 players who are completely vaccinated, and they got sick because it looks like the super spreader was the All-Star game, and they brought it back. So now they've got 3 players caught.
Were all the guys that got it again, were they actually all vaccinated? Do we know that?
Well, yes. 3 of them were vaccinated, and the last check as we're doing this show live, there's 3 other players that they're not sure of, that they're still undergoing testing, so it could be 6. But the point that people are constantly missing in this, and this is part of what I've gone on to, is there is a lingering factor from COVID. There are people who are affected by this and will have their breathing affected, their limbs affected, their joints affected. There are so many different maladies down the line that they will live with for the rest of their life just by having this once. So it's not even always death. You could be crippling somebody for the rest of their life.
I will also say that
stunning stupidity.
The anti-vaxxers, and I might be wrong about this, but it was my impression that they used to be from the left. I'm old enough to use the term hippies, but it used to be the hippie flower children who were anti-vaxxers, the people that would bring their comfort dogs to Publix to shit on the broccoli. Those are the people that were anti-vaxxers, the Robert Kennedy Jr. types that they were very the left used to be the anti-vaxxers based on my experience, and somehow now the crazy right has inherited this. I don't know how that crust bred, but if I recall, it was the left that was anti-vax for the longest time, at least in one era. And now it's completely flopped. And I will say too that the left, there's a lot of people on the left, some of them are mutual friends of ours. As soon as I post something positive about COVID, like for example, we're like down to like 280 deaths a day right now. And we had 10 days in January where we had 4,000 deaths. So it's good news. We're still in very good news. But one of my left-wing friends, oh no, John, you're not paying attention. It's going to kill us all. No, it's not going to kill us all. They're just as crazy in their misunderstanding of math as QAnon was.
Ooh, wait a minute, math. Oh, wait a minute. Now you're getting into logic here. Stop, John. Stop. You're going to hurt yourself.
No, 1%.
You're gonna neck snap.
Oh, it's only 1%, but 1% of $330 million, 330 million people is what? 3,300,000 people, right? That's a lot of dead people.
So LA, you said that you're vaccinated. I guess your family is as well. And are you starting to get back out on the road? And how do you feel about that? You might work in a club someplace, or you might go to an event as a performer. Somebody's in there and they're a super spreader. All of a sudden, you might get sick. You might pass it on to your daughter. You might pass it on to your family again. I mean, come on, this is ridiculously stupid here.
I will give you a story. I just did the Miami Improv in March with Craig Robinson and 2 other comics. And let me tell you, it was 300 and some odd people. Following week was Palm Beach Improv, 450 people, 6 shows. One guy on the tour came back with COVID. I came home. My wife got it. She was in the hospital for 10 days. She's got scars on her lungs right now. Everybody in my house got it, both of my kids. I'm the only one that didn't get it.
See, but there's the point. It's not that you did something foolish. It's that somebody else did something foolish. And now
well, we don't even know. It's possible that I might have, because it might have been on me, and I might have been carrying it around because I did a lot of traveling even during this. And I stayed away from people for the most part, unless I was at the house. I went out, did what I had to do, came back in, was at the house. My wife is a flight attendant. She travels internationally. She came back off of a trip, got it, and was laid out.
You might have caught it internationally then. It wasn't even here in the States.
That's the thing. Don't know. And she still hasn't been vaccinated. She's
okay, now wait, hang on. I'm gonna get personal here for a second, because now you brought this up. Your wife has not been vaccinated. Does she refuse to get vaccinated? Is she scared? Why did she not get it?
Since she got it and had to go to the hospital, the strain and the way that she had it, from what they've told us, she can't get it for 90 days after she got out of the hospital. She's got to wait till August before she's eligible to even get it.
Okay, so medically they're keeping her from getting it right now. Right. But why did she not get the vaccine when it was first available?
Well, in all honesty, when it was first available, I wasn't going to get it either. I mean, as a black man, we don't have that great a history with the medical field and testing of things like this. So my attitude was, I don't need to get it. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not getting it. But then I thought about it and I was like, hey, I'm the same guy with 2 knee replacements, a hip replacement, and a shoulder that just got reattached. I'm the last guy to mistrust the medical department or the medical field, and I've had all this done.
Yeah, isn't that irrational? I'm going to be honest with you. Isn't it now? Because I understand that the black community has been used and abused by the medical community over generations here. But with regard to being here in 2021, isn't it irrational to think that somebody's going to come out and poison you simply because you're black?
Don't know. And based on the climate that we have right now, it's a roll of the dice for some people, depending upon where they get their news from. I'm the kind of person that, like I said, I couldn't roll the dice on my health because I've already rolled the dice going in during a pandemic and getting my shoulder replaced. I mean, you can't do much more gambling than that. So I was like, what the hell? Let me get this done and keep it moving, get on with my life. That's my thinking.
Will your wife get the vaccine as soon as she is that first
Probably
day that she's now available?
Yes. Yeah.
One thing that's out there, Ed, that we don't know, and I wish there would be more on this, is that of the people who are not vaccinated, there are a proportion that probably have immunity because they contracted COVID and got sick, or the Red Cross did is, they do blood drawings all the time, and back in March, about a third of the people had antibodies. So there is this unknown thing out there. They say, oh, there's let's say 30% of the adults are not vaccinated. Well, a chunk of them probably have immunity. To what degree, nobody knows. It looks like it might be lifelong, but we don't know. But that's not been brought up a lot yet, and that's a legitimate argument. I mean, my son caught COVID on a plane going to Miami, and he knew that it was a danger to do it. He had to do it because of his job, and he's one of those. He's in LA. He's like, Dad, I'm not going to get the shot because he thoroughly believes that he is, protected, and I can't at this point.
How do you feel as a father about that?
I would rather the
Briefly.
odds, because it's all risk assessment. I would take the shot just for the hell of it. I mean, the odds, the risk of getting the shot is minimal compared to maybe he's going to boost up his immunity even more. But I'm not going to, he's 32. What am I going to do?
For me, it's real simple. Here, go ahead. Whatever you want. Just you want to give me a booster, fine. You want to give me 2 more, fine. I'm okay with it. I got no problem with it.
The scarier part is people who went out and got the first shot and never went back and got the second one.
See, that's the next thing. You're only half vaccinated. They've already proven that it doesn't do a damn bit of good. You basically go ahead, get vaccinated with seltzer water at that point, if you want to. So we'll see if America gets any smarter. I'm not holding my breath. But let's take a break. Go ahead and bring in our featured guest today, because it is a pleasure to have someone who has spent so much time investigating as a journalist. John and I have spent a lot of our time as journalists here, but anytime we can bring somebody on who has actually worked really hard at this profession, to be somebody who digs into the facts and comes up with some outstanding stories and reporting. She has interviewed so many infamous convicted murderers in her time. She's been to a lot of criminal trials. She has written books about this before. She is working on a new book. We're going to talk about all that as well. And specifically a story in the news today that is, and I like to use this, that is in her craw, that needs to be discussed a lot more and is not getting a lot of discussion. And that's the kind of thing that we do here on the Free for All. It is a pleasure, and I mean this sincerely, a pleasure to welcome in somebody who I've had a lot of respect for over the years. Diane Dimond joins us today on the Free for All. Diane, it is a pleasure to see you. We're missing your audio, Diane. Your audio is off.
How are you, Ed?
There you go. For whatever reason, you're on a delay. That is strange.
Oh, that's weird. Can you hear me?
This is live television, kids. This is what happens.
Is there something I should be doing here?
I don't.
Should I re-establish?
Yeah, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop you here in just a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and ask you to come back in and check all your settings, because you are delayed for whatever reason. Your audio is on about a 3-second delay. So John and I know full well what it's like to be on a 3-second delay. I wish we were a lot of times in our careers.
That reminded me a lot of one of my favorite horrible cartoons, Clutch Cargo, which the lip sync was way off. It was wasn't a delay, but the lips would go sideways.
I see it here, John. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if LA's ever Clutch Cargo, but that's from our era. It was a horrible cartoon, and they moved the lips, like, instead of paying for the animation, the lips kind of just went sideways.
Well, yeah, but what happens is the lips weren't animated; they were actual human lips.
Oh, they're actually people. You're right. They were people.
They were people lips, and then what they did is they kind of cut them out and put them on the face.
Yeah.
It was absolutely terrible. All right, let's see if we can get Diane back in here and see if the gods of tech have got us. Diane, try again.
Okay, how does
Bingo!
this sound?
There you go.
Yay!
Rock and roll. You got it nice.
Well, welcome to my game room. I see that John's in his kitchen in LA. I don't know. Are you in your office somewhere?
I'm in my office. How are you?
He's got office. You've got game room. I've got studio. John's got a refrigerator behind him. So actually, he's the smartest one of the group, because if
Very
anybody wants to
classy.
drink, he can start. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
but I just don't know what's in it.
I was really interested in your COVID-19 shot vaccination discussion, and can I just ask LA? I mean, I'm a reporter, right? What do? I ask questions.
You ask
Can
questions.
I ask LA, what do you think would be the best way for this administration to get to the Black community and say, hey, you got to take these shots. You just have to.
Great question.
Wow. I don't have an answer for that because the history has been so bad. And right now, the information is so untrusting with all the fake news, with all the, whose side are you on? I don't think there's any one way to try to do it except online to try to get the kids involved. They go to Instagram, go to the Snapchats, and try to get them because.
And hope
Well,
it
here's
think there's any one
let me
way.
bring this up, and let me ask Diane this too, and John as well. But Diane, and this is something that I've been in a constant conversation with people about COVID, the Trump administration, the Biden administration, wherever you want to go. We live in a society right now in a time when we have the opportunity to be the smartest individuals that have ever walked the face of the earth. We have it right in front of us. Hell, are you kidding? If it gets bad, I got it on my phone, for crying
Well,
out
if
loud.
we just stop fighting with each other, over ideology, just remember we're all Americans, that might help.
But can't you still, even if it's continue to fight about ideology, go ahead. But if you use the internet and look for facts and go to trusted places, trusted sources, instead of going to, and I'll flip it right out here, Fox, OANN, Newsmax, and all these places that are nothing more than propaganda delivery.
MSNBC,
I'm sorry?
MSNBC.
Well, see,
I
but
used to work there, and I watch MSNBC now, and it's like, oh my God, I never would have been allowed to say something like that, what they're saying now.
but
we
you're
used to just do the news.
Let me say something, Ed, though.
Go ahead.
I know that you get outraged by Fox and all that, and I understand it. My cable here in Hawaii is flooded with all this religious bull crap. There's about 10, zealots selling one thing or the other. The cable news, the television is the entertainment business. There used to be the weekly world news on the way out of the grocery store with, Elvis is a lesbian turtle and he's living, in the jungle.
He wasn't?
And that, well, I think there's something to that. And a certain percentage of people believe that stuff. The First Amendment allows Fox News to do their thing. On the other hand, their broadcast Family Guy, which was their product, and now it's a Disney product, they had the most outrageous broadcast product. They had a scene in there where during the high school prom, the girls had their abortions in a dumpster, and then they came out doing a gay chorus dance out of the dumpster. So the First Amendment allows you to do both of those things. Fox developed a brand that they knew would attract a certain audience. So did OAN, and so did Newsmax, and so did all these religious idiots on cable. And you got the Food Channel, and you got the Nazi channel that always has Hitler things on it. But that's just, I'm not outraged by it because I know it's entertainment. Now, the problem is that people don't know it's entertainment. There are people that think pro wrestling is real stuff.
But when did American society become so fucking stupid?
Yeah.
The Kardashians.
So
When?
undiscerning.
The Kardashians.
Yeah. I don't know.
But there had to be a time because we're all pretty much growing up in the same era. And when did this country hit a roadblock and a speed bump where we become so stunningly stupid that we don't want to believe facts anymore? Where did that come from?
It's the internet, Ed. I mean, MIT has done research on it that bad news, bad facts spread 9 times faster than regular facts are boring. Being a reasonable person, which is a test of our legal system, is boring. It's much better. Donald Trump got elected because he's a great entertainer. He's like watching the Hindenburg crash every day on live TV. People love watching that.
So Diane, let me throw it to you then as the journalist. I realize we're not going to sit here and solve the ills of the world and find that exact critical nexus moment when it happened. But in your experience, when did it happen when this country decided we were no longer going to believe in facts and we were simply going to go off on our own little cadre of idiocy here and not believe what's in front of us? When did that happen?
Yeah,
when did it become
I think,
stupid?
I used to cover the White House, and during Ronald Reagan's time, it was, the dawning of the new tomorrow. And everybody was like, yeah, he's our president. So what if he was Bonzo for whatever before? But it was a feeling that we're all Americans. And then, I mean, I could go back to Nixon being, leaving office, but I think with Clinton, I think when Clinton was impeached, but he didn't step down, we started to say, well, whoa, wait a minute. What is it with government? I thought we had these safeguards and now he's still there. Whether you think an affair should have gotten him out of office or not, let's put that aside. I think that's when people started to, not trust the government. And then the media started to get into things in a biased way. And then the internet exploded. I mean, I remember covering a big story in 1993, and there was no internet. I covered the same story. It was the Michael Jackson story. In 2003, I rebroke that story in 2003, and it was night and day. I think John's right. It was the internet. All of a sudden, I got death threats. I got, it was horrible. And it was all traced to the internet. So thank you, Mark Zuckerberg, for Facebook and all the rest of it that allows these keyboard warriors to sit at home and spew hate and spew threats. And, we've become a society where we can't look at each other and have a conversation anymore. Everybody's down here, on their phone doing this, especially the young people.
But if we're at that point where the internet, and I agree with you, the internet is where it came about, but if the internet opened up that Pandora's box, did it not just then reveal the level of stupidity that existed in America that was simply just waiting to be let out of the box? For
Back
somebody?
again, I think it's the Kardashians and the reality shows where people stop believing and living their own lives and trying to live somebody else's life. And you're
Boy,
watching
that's so
somebody,
smart.
you think that what they're doing is something that you should aspire to, and that this will bring you wealth and happiness. Everybody is not prepared to be famous or on TV or knows how to handle that. And when you put people who have zero talent to begin with, those situations, and you pedestalize those people, and you start making people think there's somebody to look up to, and people in society are looking up to them and making them feel like they should be looked up to, we
And
got a
making
real
them
problem.
millionaires. Yeah.
We got a real problem.
Well, if you're going to go to that distance, then I'll take this back to sports for a moment because, and John and I worked in sports for a lot of years. It's this fallacy that parents started to push on kids in the 70s that don't worry about it. Hey, if you're an athlete, you can make $1 million. You could become a great NBA player. And then it worked to the 80s, and then it worked to the 90s. You could become a great football player. You can't. 1% of 1% of 1% actually make a buck at it. But you've
Yeah.
got parents, guardians, marketing around them that tells them everybody can be a superstar. And then you follow that up with the entertainment industry, which now tells everybody
Well,
if you've got 50,000 clicks on your TikTok account, you can be a superstar. It doesn't work that way. You got to work for it.
that's kind of the same thing that I experienced as a parent. I was a parent late. I didn't have kids till I was 39. My son is now 16. My daughter will be 21 in September. But coming up, what used to be that a kid had to earn in order to get recognition, a trophy or whatever, now it doesn't have to be earned. It's a participation trophy. You just got to show up. You don't have to
Yeah.
put forth any effort. You don't have to
Yeah.
be really anything. Just show up. We're glad to have you.
Well, maybe that's it. You don't have to be anything. All you have to do is have a video camera and your phone and create a 6-second dance video that gets 50,000 hits and you're popular. But isn't
Show
that
up.
So
then? Go ahead, Diane.
you know what we're saying here. In
That
America,
we're all
we
old?
got too comfortable. We lost our ethics. We lost the family structure. We lost people going to church to learn right from wrong. We became coddling helicopter parents. Oh, yes, whatever you do, it's great. Good job. Oh, I hate that phrase so much. I agree with LA. Give everybody a trophy. I think it's self defeating. So we forgot to work hard and forgot to have an ethical base. Sad.
From the media
Also,
side. No, go ahead.
I would say too, one thing Diane brought up is Nixon and all that. The most fascinating things I absolutely advise everybody to look at the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma. But the
Yeah.
best one, in my opinion, is is get me Roger Stone. Now, Roger Stone goes back to Nixon, and he readily admits that he targets the stupid people. Tell a lie long enough, people believe it. He is the
Absolutely.
guy. He is the guy behind Stop the Steal. He's the guy in Trump's ear right now. Alex Jones is like him on steroids, basically Roger Stone on steroids. And Trump and the politicians are taking advice from people like this. Newt Gingrich had a seminar where you call people socialists and liberals and these catchphrases that are still being used today. There are people in the background that have instructed politicians to delve and tap into the stupid, visceral part of society. And I don't know, by the way, whether it's stupid, because a lot of people fell for Bernie.
No, it is stupid, John. It's not careless. I
No,
mean, look.
wait. There was, I think, $60 billion lost. I was in New York when the list came out for Bernie Madoff's victims. And they were doctors, dentists, financial advisors, all these supposed experts who believed in their heart that Uncle Bernie guaranteed 10%, which was complete and utter bullshit and impossible. So are all those people stupid?
Yes.
Not the ones I met. Not, I
Greedy?
wouldn't call
I'd say they were more ignorant. They didn't know that they didn't know.
Okay, but
I mean,
where do you separate ignorance from stupidity? I mean, look,
I
my
say
granny said
greedy.
never call anybody stupid. But go ahead, Diane.
I say greedy. I mean, if somebody says, "Hey, I can get you 70% on your return on your money," really?
Yeah.
That doesn't. We've lost the ability to be critical thinkers. I
Well,
think
you want to believe that BS. You just hit the nail on the head. You want to believe that BS.
Yeah.
It's total BS. And it's like that chain letter that we used to get. If you send this to 20 of your friends, we'll send you $500.
right.
Many of us have done it multiple times, knowing it was total BS.
There's something else that I want to bring into this, and LA, you as a consumer of news, because you base a lot of what you do on the news and what happens in current events. That's how you become a successful comic. Diane and John and I, we've worked in this for many, many years. Part of the inferences, and Diane, you brought this up earlier when I rolled off a couple of the propaganda networks, and you dropped in MSNBC.
And CNN.
and
They're all biased.
however,
They're all
CNN's a big one.
Wait a minute.
It's a big one too.
I got to cut this off at the knees, because there's a big difference here between the delivery of news and panel discussions, which is what we're doing right here, which is all
Right.
opinion based. And what happens is you have what you just mentioned: MSNBC, CNN, NBC, even the network itself, all these other various. They put people together in a room. They all spit out the same bullshit, and we're all supposed to believe it. But none of it is based on factual reporting. It's all just opinionating, is all it is.
Well,
I
it depends
still
on
go
which
back-
facts they're trying to tell you.
Well, but I still go
Because
back to the
everybody
fact that
has
if you-
their own facts that they bring to the
Well,
thing.
but that's
That's
just
right.
it. There
And
used
that's
to
it.
be. I think we all come from an era not far removed, where you used to have disclaimers on the bottom. These are the opinions of the individual. They are
Right.
not the opinions of the
Right.
network. They're not the opinions of the sponsors. You don't get that anymore. None of it's out there. And I've always said that if you want news, you watch the CBS Evening News at 6:30, the ABC News at 6:30, NBC News at 6:30, and when CNN is reporting actual news and getting it from the reporters instead of seeking opinions, that can be trusted. But we're a society that digs into these opinionators just because they spew what we want to hear. To me, and again, I'm going to ask Diane and John this, and LA too from your side, isn't it fair to say that there is news to be found, but you've got to separate it from the bullshit opinions?
Of course, and you've got to have bosses. I've been in this business way longer than I want to admit, but I used to have bosses that said, go out, dig the story, knock on doors, find the facts, get me documents before you go on the air and say a word.
Right,
And I
proof.
want to see your script. I want to see your script before you go on the air. Okay. Today, the economics of the news business is, well, we don't have that many reporters, so let's call a bunch of pundits and put them on a panel like this one. We don't purport to be doing news here, but
No.
that's what they pass off as news on Fox, on MSNBC, on CNN. And that's not news, that's opinion. And you're hard pressed to find a newscast, a bona fide newscast on cable television. I can't find one.
John?
The thing is, Ed, that the news business the word business, it's entertainment. Okay,
Yeah.
so they have found that talking head blithering idiots like myself right now are more entertaining and cost less. I mean, you're not paying me anything to sit by my refrigerator and spew out my nonsense, and it's probably more entertaining than a doctoral thesis on the economy or something like that that might be more worthy of the airtime. So it's ultimately the entertainment dollar and the production value of people spewing off their nonsense that sells more, increases the ratings, and it is a business. That's what it's about. If people who are in the businesses don't get that, maybe you go to PBS, and PBS, maybe has the purest
Yep.
stuff, contaminated stuff, but
BBC.
CBS. Ed mentioned CBS. I worked for CBS owned and operated station. It all goes back to your standards and practices. I know at CBS
There
you
are
could
no
not
standards
make,
and practices anymore.
well, in CBS, yes. Well, I don't know. I haven't been there in a while, but
Well, no,
CBS.
but what standards and practices looks for these days is when somebody spits out something stupid on Twitter, or when somebody makes a statement that can be misinterpreted by someone, or it's an offhanded comment. Diane is right. There was a time when we as journalists had to go to the producers. You did the story. Here's the script. And someone looked at the script. I can tell you right now that at every single one of the network affiliates in South Florida, and I'm talking West Palm Beach and Miami, Fort Lauderdale, they do not spend the time to double check what their reporters are
Right.
doing.
I mean,
Why? 9 times out of 10, they're not doing structured stories anymore. You know what it is? Go find the yellow tape. Let's go find where the cops are right now. There's 6
If
dead
it
bodies,
bleeds, it
and let's just report
leads.
on it with no facts whatsoever.
Yeah.
right.
If it bleeds,
Well,
it
I mean,
leads.
I know that I did investigative for 15 years, kind of Joe Sixpack investigations, like why parking meters in Fort Lauderdale stole your money and blah blah blah. But all of my stuff, was quadruple checked. I mean, I'm ultimately responsible. My photographer was always a teammate of mine that was responsible, and then my media producer, executive producer, news director, all of my stuff in New York was watched by about 10 eyeballs. And all the time I was consulting with the lawyers, News Corp, Fox, by the way, before anything aired, and they would drill me on stuff. I think that still goes on at so, like, for example, my guess is it still goes on at CBS networks. It still goes on at 60 Minutes. It
At
still
the
goes on,
network, you're right, at the network level, but not at the
right,
local level.
or at the cable level. But it is cable's, in my opinion, entertainment. So if you want to, it depends on what degree. Do you want the faith healer or do you want Fox News? It's all a bunch of bullshit. It's all
Hey,
complete
LA,
bullshit.
as a consumer then, LA, and as the guy sitting in this audience who doesn't go out and dig for stories, how do you know when you're being lied to?
Well, number one, I don't watch television news at all, and I
It's been
haven't
nice to
since.
talk to LA, everybody. Please bid him goodbye. We'll have to talk to him later.
Well, see, that's the key phrase. I don't watch television news, but I get news from other sources.
Such
Television
as?
news for me is a little too fantastic and just downer. I haven't watched it since the first election when Trump won.
So where do you get your news?
Internet, newspaper. I'm a reader. I like reading stuff, and I like having paper in my hands. And if it's in a newspaper, generally speaking, good, bad, or indifferent, they have to back that because it's right there in print. It can't be just retracted. So I have a tendency to sometimes be a day or so behind. USA Today is one of my favorites. That's when I'm traveling, I like having that paper in my hand. So for me, it's a little bit internet. I watch BBC on TV if I'm watching anything, and maybe a little bit of, but more reading than anything else.
Are we now going back then, and Diane, I want you to talk about this too.
Yeah.
Are we going back to the fact that if you really want news, stop watching the broadcast bullshit at this point?
Can I tell you why I'm not on television anymore? Well,
I'll bet you and I have a lot of the same reasons. Go right ahead.
First of all, as a woman, I'm considered too old, so nobody's knocking on my door. But there came a period in my life where I lost my parents. I got, my contract at MSNBC was over, and I didn't work anywhere. I began to panic. And then I realized, I won't tell you my whole sob story, but I realized what I really liked to do was my investigative stuff. So I got myself a syndicated column, which I am still writing to this day, 13 years later. and I covered the kind of stories I want to cover. I can do a little opinion if I want in my syndicated column, but I do long form things. I work for Investigation Discovery Channel, and I do a lot of crime. I am in a story now. What I really want to talk about, if you got 2 minutes.
No, actually, we
And
have a lot longer than that because I know that you wanted to talk about this story specifically. Let me
yeah,
hang on one sec. I want to get to that because you're
okay,
talking about the conservatorship story, and I want to get
yeah,
to that. But let me get to this point.
okay.
Do we not, as thinking, rational professionals sitting here today, have to say that despite the fact we're going to get hammered, I'll get hammered by this. If you want news, if you want information, if you want fact, you have to
Absolutely.
go to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, the Chicago Tribune, the Miami
The
Herald,
Wall
the
Street
places
Journal.
that the Wall Street
Yes.
Journal. It is still, at the end of the day, the old print sources and the traditional ones that, yeah, they make mistakes. Absolutely, everybody makes
And they
mistakes.
have bias. They have bias in what they put in their paper on the front page.
But the
Oh my
bias
God,
is
Russiagate,
marked.
Russiagate, Russiagate. Oh gosh, turned out to be nothing. So there is still is bias, but we all have to hone our critical thinking ability. Hey, wait a minute. What do you mean the Hunter Biden laptop isn't worth reporting? Of course it is. I mean, if it was Eric Trump with a laptop like that, everybody would have been reporting it.
Yeah, but you don't
So
keep going
we
after it
have
because
to
it's been proven to be
separate.
bullshit. It's been already
What?
disproven across the board.
What? The laptop?
Yeah.
Oh God. Well, you and I'll talk about that off
Okay.
camera. I don't
Okay. Well,
agree.
that's all right. I mean, it's just there is no laptop, and but that's another story. Okay.
Yeah.
See, but
Okay.
here we go. This is a great inference of what we're talking about here, because there's a source here, there's a source here. Who do you believe?
That's right.
Well, who do you believe, and what do you really care about for you personally? I mean, I guess that's what it comes down to, isn't it? I mean, you brought up the laptop. I don't care about a laptop.
And who cares if he
Dude,
was sleeping with prostitutes and has a baby out of wedlock? I really don't care.
not my business.
When was the last time
Patriots
somebody
owner
checked
was
out the
doing-
Kennedy administration?
The
Just
Patriots
saying.
owner was doing the same thing. I mean, I got bigger issues. I got kids that got to be in school. I got to pay tuition, and I got to figure out how to do it during a pandemic when the majority of my money making hasn't come back yet. So,
Right.
you can take your laptop and your news and all that kind of stuff because none of it really applies to me now. When we're talking about the vaccinations, now we're talking about something that applies to me. And that's what I think the news has forgotten is what's
Right.
important
Oh,
to
man.
the average person.
Well, see, I'll bring this
Agree.
up too, and I want to go back to local again. Local is where everything should start, and where we all, 3 out of the 4 of us here, started in local outlets. And we know what it was like to have our information checked, to learn, to basically be part of going out and covering stories.
Albuquerque.
We
I
did
started in
this.
Albuquerque. Yeah.
Local television stations, first of all, local radio news is completely dead, except for
Yeah.
WCBS in New York, KCBS in Los Angeles, even and I can't think of the station in Chicago. I know I'll get hammered for that. It doesn't even exist in Boston anymore. They don't have a full-time
BC.
news
Oh, that's Boston.
station anymore. So, and in local television news, it's a disaster because, again, we are right back to nothing investigative, nothing digging, nothing trying to think what LA said. What's important? Here's LA and his family can't make ends meet anymore because his business has gone away. Well, let's do a story on that. Let's find out where it's going. But instead, you go to the assignment desk that says, wait a minute, you got yellow tape and a dead body, go. And 3 out of the 4 of us sitting here know that's exactly how it works anymore, because there is a thinking process at local television news where if we can lead off the show with weather, which is the biggest thing now in the hurricane coming, or the drought, or if we've got a car in a ditch and God forbid a dead child, or a
And we
child
have
dies
video
by
of it.
I'm
If
sorry,
you have video of it, wow, it's on the air.
we got video, and
If
we all
somebody
know that
sent
that's
in their
important, and
cell
yet that's
phone
not
video,
important.
yeah, that
Well-
I'm sitting here in New York City, the #1 market. We watch the news every night. My husband worked at WCBS Radio as an anchorman within the CBS family for 40 years. We watch the news here in New York City, and they lead with There is an accident on the corner of Lexington and Park, and well, those two don't intersect. Anyway, 3rd Avenue and Lexington, and we have some video of it. You know, it's like, it's a car accident. This is New York City. What are you doing? It drives me crazy.
To be fair,
Well,
though,
like you said, what did you say? If it bleeds, it what?
If it bleeds, it leads.
and
It
that's the
leads
way
the
it started.
newscast. You
Look,
know?
we can go back to the days of Miami when there was a certain station in Miami that had to go independent, and it
SVN?
decided. And I'm going to do this right now because all I know is I'll get in trouble. I don't care. But there was a station that everything, and John was there at the same time that I was there, and it was, there's a car accident, there's a body on I-95, there's a body in a ditch somewhere,
A
kid
fire.
is
Fires are big.
a fire, and you know.
Yeah,
you're
but
right
you know
on it.
what? In their defense, that is what creates ratings and
But
numbers.
it made him a fortune.
I was in a very large investigative team in New York at Channel 5. We had 3 on-air people, numerous producers, executive producers, 3 photographers, got 300 to 400 tips a day. Arnold Diaz, the inventor of Shame on You, the original consumer guy, was my colleague.
I know Arnold.
Yeah, and you know, we had a product that was good and entertaining, and Arnold and I mastered in what I'd call the unscheduled interviews. Other people call them other things, but we had a good product. The problem is, though, in the big scale of things, investigative television costs a lot of money, and you have a legal liability with it. You know, I don't know how many times I've been maybe sued, you know, along with my stories that were scrutinized up the hilt about 5 to 8 times in my career that were lock solid stories. And from a business standpoint, after a while, they're like, well, this stuff is good, but it costs us a lot of money, and it's better to lead with an accident on the corner of Lexington and 6th because it's cheaper and it doesn't cost anything. And we're not going to get sued over covering an accident. That's kind of the business decision that's being made here. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's the reality.
But I do want to bring one thing into this, and when Diane, when you used your phone, it is fair to say that, for better or for worse, this little piece of electronic has broken a tremendous amount of stories in the last couple of years, and without people, and I hate the word citizen journalists. That's bullshit. I'm sorry. If you're not a journalist, you're not a citizen journalist. So let's stop right there. What you are is somebody who's inquisitive, God bless you, and you want to stop something from happening, you want to notice it, God bless you, and you're out here and you use your phone to, I mean, look what happened. How many times can we mention this here, that it's happened with Derek Chauvin, and the fact that were it not for somebody standing there with a phone and capturing this guy might be on the street today. So it is still up to the news organizations to use it judiciously and be able to put it in context, then make it a sensationalistic moment when it can be extrapolated as mere opinion. Fair?
You know, I got to tell you, last night on the news, there was a DoorDash delivery man who got an order to take to the cops at the local precinct. Did you hear this? Apparently, the guy opened up the container, took a whiz, closed it, put a note in there and said, I hope you like the taste of this or something. So they found that guy and they walked him in a perp walk last night from the door down 3 steps into a car. 7 times they re-rolled that 10 seconds.
A perp walk
as they
for a
told the
guy who
story
pissed
of
in
this
food.
guy.
Think about that.
Because somebody had the cell phone video of it. It was like, okay, I got it. You made an arrest. Thank you.
Right. But you and I both know that in the old days, Graybeard days, what is that? That's a 15-second voiceover is what it is, or it's a 15-second on camera, even if it's a story.
Yeah.
At that point.
Well, anyway.
And that's the nonsense.
Welcome to the media.
I do want to make sure now, and let me get to this because I love the fact that these shows go and we could do them for hours. But I wanted Diane to make sure that she makes a point here and bring this into a conversation that I promoted, because I will be very honest. The Britney Spears story, I wanted to turn off every single time it came on my network television. I'm going, that's not, please, can we?
I don't care about Britney Spears. Yeah.
Are we really covering Britney Spears and this conservatorship as part of hard news? Again, now that's me, and that's what a lot of people. I think news should be a little bit more in depth. Now, what Diana's talking about is you followed these conservatorships for many years. There's a story here, but I think the real depth of the story got lost in all the hyperbole about Britney Spears.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I could talk about how the news media takes a story and overblows it when it doesn't really deserve to be overblown. I wrote a whole book about that. Remember the White House gate crashers? They didn't crash the White House. You don't crash the White House. And I wrote a book telling people why.
Cirque
But
du Soleil.
the Salahis, yeah.
Salahi, yeah. I'm sorry.
So I'm watching the Britney Spears thing and I'm thinking, wait a minute, don't people get this? It's not about Britney Spears. It is about something I've been covering since 2015. I write long form. I did a 6-part newspaper series on this. I've written, anyway, I've written tons of words about the conservatorship. It's called guardianship in most states. This insipidly horrid court system that literally traps people and takes away all their civil rights. And that's what happened to Britney Spears. There are at least 1.5 million people living in the United States under guardianship right now. Okay, they're disabled kids who they were harmed at birth, got cerebral palsy. They won a $5 million settlement from the hospital. And when they turn 18, the vultures come in, total strangers. They know who have these settlements and when they turn 18, and they petition the court to become that person's guardian. And judges routinely take disabled people, elderly people, very rich people. I can give you a whole list of celebrities that this has happened to. But Britney's story somehow broke through. And I guess it's because of the Free Britney movement. They just kept getting it publicized and getting it publicized. And I'm glad, I'm sorry that she's gone through all this 13 years, 12 years of a guardianship with no civil rights. You understand? She can't have a phone. She can't choose her doctor. She can't vote. She can't sign a contract, but she can work her ass off for her father, who makes these worldwide tours for her, makes sure she does 4 albums in the last few years, and gets her a residency in Vegas. She's made hundreds of thousands of dollars since she's been in guardianship, but she has no control over it.
Why, this may seem like a crazy question here, why should the general public care what happened? And you know what this is, where this is going. Why should the general public care about a multi-billionaireess who proved early on in her career that she couldn't handle her own affairs to begin with, and had them taken away from her because she was making decisions that were, quite frankly, not those that a rational adult would make?
To you. It can happen to you. It can happen to your mother or your father or your sweet Aunt Bessie. I could give you I could give you dozens and hundreds of examples where an old woman living alone, perfectly healthy in her head, walks to the mailbox. This is an actual case. Walks to the mailbox, fell down. The mailman found her and a neighbor. They called for help, and the Adult Protective Services showed up, and they said, well, boy, she's disoriented. They put her in a nursing home and she never saw her house again. Now, this woman happened to have about $1 million in the bank. And the guardian gloms onto it and says, here's what we're going to do with your life, Aunt Bessie. We're going to sell your house because you obviously it's too big for you. And we're going to put you in a nursing home. And then I'm going to control everybody who sees you. See, same thing happened to Britney. She couldn't see any friends. She couldn't see her family unless it was scheduled and there was a visitor there. I have a 19-year-old kid in Staten Island right now, cerebral palsy, won a big award. He's about to turn 20. He wants to control his own money, but because he has cerebral palsy and he's in a wheelchair and he shakes a little bit, these vultures moved in and said to the court, we want to be his guardian. And the fault lies, in my mind, with the judges. Because the judges get these petitions, pieces of paper that say, this person, blah, 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 can't handle their own, they're disoriented, maybe dementia. And the judge never checks a thing, doesn't have a hearing, hears from no witnesses, and says, well, you're an officer of the court, this must be true. This person is incapacitated. That's the designation. And when you get incapacitated, all your rights are taken away. LA, you got to surrender your phone. John, you can't see any of your relatives because the guardian doesn't like them and she thinks that they upset you. So you
They do
are
all
in a
upset me.
prison.
I have a question for you. That how does all of this? Because this applies to one of my concerns in the street. We have all these psychiatric patients in the street around loose. There was
Yeah.
a Supreme Court ruling, I think it was O'Connor versus Donaldson or something like that in the 70s, that basically does not allow people to be confined involuntarily unless they meet a very high standard of danger, extreme danger to themselves or the community.
Themselves or others.
These-
Yeah.
So these guardianships seem to be involuntary confinement in a sense, and I wonder how that they survive the legal test, which allows a lot of people who are unstable and dangerous on the streets because they don't meet that high standard. How is
Yeah.
Brittany, who's cutting albums and all that, confined by this? There's no difference between this and a psychiatric center, basically. How do they meet
Right.
that legal standard? I don't understand. It doesn't seem to work. It doesn't make sense.
Because it's a very closed and secret process. It's in family court. And the excuse for the secrecy is, well, there are mental health issues or dementia or physical health issues. And under HIPAA, we can't tell you anything. So it's all secret. And the lawyers who bring the petitions are talking to the judges who are lawyers, members of the bar, and many of the guardians who are appointed, these total strangers, are often lawyers. And so nobody wants to tattle on anybody else because then their fees will stop. And guess who pays all the fees? The person who is made the ward of the court. The incapacitated person pays all the fees. Britney Spears has paid, I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars. No, I'll say tens of millions of dollars to outsiders to keep her in captivity. Now, look, does she have some mental problems? Probably. But is that what we do to people who have mental problems? Do we just take away all their civil rights?
Well, okay,
They
but what's
can't
the
vote,
answer
they
then? I
can't
mean,
marry,
get in a short span of time, then, Diane, what's the answer then to somebody who has been proven to be irrational or unable to care for their own finances without putting them into this relative prison, if you will, while at the
Right.
same time not letting the lawyers run it? What's the answer?
Well, sometimes, I'm going to be the first to tell you, sometimes guardianships are really helpful. They're really good and they're really fine. And especially if the judge in the case says, oh, there's a daughter, there's a sister, there's a brother that wants to care for you and loves you madly, great. That's a good guardianship. And lots of people need guardianships. But what I have uncovered are thousands and thousands and thousands of predatory guardianships with people. The old lady who fell at the mailbox didn't need to be in guardianship, but she was old and she was befuddled by it all and she didn't know how to fight it. And boom, within a week, she's declared incapacitated and now there ain't no turning back.
So is this something to kind of draw an end to it, because this sounds like a show that we should be doing a couple of hours on, actually.
Well, I'm
Is
writing
this-
a book about it, so I'll get
Okay,
to
well,
it.
you are writing a book about this, yes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, what's the book going to be called, or do you know yet?
Well, I started looking at just the elderly people. It breaks your heart. These boy, if this had happened to my mother in Albuquerque, she would have gotten a gun and just shot that guardian. I'm just telling you.
My mother, too.
Okay. Oh, man. My little 5-foot-tall Spitfire mother. But so I, in the beginning, concentrated on the elderly people because, after all, they've worked their whole lives. They've got a nest egg. They've got an estate that's plunderable. They're the perfect target. So I called the book The Final Racket. All these rackets to get to elderly people. But I'm broadening it out. It is disabled. It is mentally challenged people who get over the hump. I think Brittany's probably over the hump. I don't think she's going to go shave her head again. Does she still need therapy? Maybe some medicine? Yeah, maybe.
Look at LA.
Maybe.
It's always the comic in the room who goes, "I'm not so sure."
Who am I to judge?
This coming from the guy who has no
Anyway,
hair.
look, all I know is she can make hundreds of millions of dollars and pay a bunch of people, and she's productive in many ways.
Somebody needs to remind me of the movie. This was because what you're talking about was just recently done in a movie, and it had Peter Dinklage was in it, and it was.
Oh yeah, it's I Care a Lot.
I Care a Lot.
I Care
Exactly.
a Lot with Rosamund Pike. Yeah.
So and it was a brilliant film in the way it was a dark comedy, but that was based on somebody who took over people's lives as conservatorships.
She was perfect. She was the portrayal of the Guardian was perfect. Let me tell you, the feds just indicted 3 Guardians, 2 in Virginia, 1 in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania for embezzling money from their wards. Right there was a Guardian in Nevada. Her name is April Parks. She's doing 40 years now for what she did to dozens of Guardians in Nevada. New Mexico, they just gave another woman 40 years for.
So this needs
fraud,
national
conspiracy.
attention. This needs some kind of national legislative
Of
attention.
course. Of course.
Which,
I
of
did this
course-
6-part series for the Albuquerque Journal
Okay.
a few years ago, and the FBI moved in and they indicted all these people in New Mexico, and now some pleaded guilty. Now they're sentencing the rest of them, and they changed the law in New Mexico. So that's what needs to happen. States need to pay attention to their most vulnerable citizens being made prey. Anyway, I'm sorry. I know I'm going
No,
on and
no,
on about
no.
this,
Look,
but
hey, wait a minute.
pisses me off.
Title of the show, Free for All. Get it all in here because that's what it's all about. Okay, so the great thing about the show is we've gone over time, which I love because I don't care. It's a beautiful thing about the
have
internet.
we?
So yeah, it's okay. It's time. Don't worry about it. So let's go ahead and close it out here because I give everybody a chance to go ahead and throw one last thing out there. Anything top of the mind? It's the last shot before we go ahead and leave. So Diane, seeing as I'm going to go to you first. From anything at all that's off the top of your mind, drop the last word from Diane Diamond.
I know it sounds corny and old-fashioned, but I wish we in America could get along better and have more toleration for other people's opinions. When I grew up, everyone had respect for everybody else's opinion. We didn't always agree, but we respected their right to have that opinion, and I wish we'd get back to that.
Okay. LA, you get a chance now because I know that hopefully we've given you at least something that you can use in the act somewhere.
Hey, man. Tonight I'm going to be at the Villain Theater in Miami, 8 o'clock show with a bunch of comics, a bunch of young comics, so it's going to be a lot of cool energy in the room. I got a comedy special coming out on Dry Bar. My Dry Bar comedy special, drybar.com. You'll be able to get that probably end of August, beginning of September. Going to be on the road doing some dates, but most importantly, the same thing that Diane said. We got to stop fighting each other. We are Americans. Stop unfriending your friends on Facebook. How else are you going to know when it's their birthday? That's all I got.
Or better yet, get off Facebook.
Well, okay. Wait a minute. Stop. That's part of our distribution here for the show, Diane. Don't screw with this now. We're looking for revenue. Look, I'm out here every day doing Polar and having my seltzer water here going, the people at Polar, watch, we are available. See, there you go. We're all
I'm
available.
having ginger beer.
We can be bought. I mean, trust me, that's what the media is all about. We can all be bought. Mr. Dutzman from Hawaii. And the beautiful thing about it is the only reason that he has agreed to appear on this show is because we've been friends for a billion years, because I'm keeping him from his bodyboarding right now.
Yes.
So
Yes,
you
we
will be
have
able to go out.
3 to 4 foot waves right now. I'm missing.
Well, okay,
I
so
would
I'll
say-
give you the last shot, John. Go for it.
I would say that because Donald Trump was such an entertainment guru, as I said, watching the Hindenburg crash or a plane crash every day, almost guaranteed, that there is probably a measurable decrease in advertising revenue on all the cables for sure, and maybe some of the broadcasts without his presence. He used to be a must-watch president, and that's as odd as it seems. There might be some people wishing he was back because they don't know what the hell to do about their ratings now that the Hindenburg isn't crashing every day on their air.
Well, welcome to the John Dutzman Hindenburg. With that, hey, listen, we'll do this all again. A reminder to everybody, John Dutzman has no social media whatsoever because he wants to completely step. Well, no, wait a minute. No, you are no, but you're pretty much the gone guy on social media. So don't try to get a hold of John, because he's right. Am I right on that?
I'm wanted in most states. Yeah. That's
Well,
why
that's what we
I'm
know.
in Hawaii, which is not part of the United States, by the way, but that's a whole hour show. So,
I want to make sure we point that out. So don't try to get a hold of John. Only I can do that. As far as L.A. Hardy is concerned, on Facebook it's at L.A. Hardy. On Twitter it's at Show Off LA. On Instagram it's Show Off LA and Black Dad 2013. Did I get everything in there?
That was it, my friend.
Okay,
Very good.
Come
Only
on,
one you missed was my website, thereallahardy.com.
Okay. Well,
The
the reason why is probably, I don't know if you sent that to me, because I don't.
Someone jacked my name.
Oh, okay. Well, let's make sure that we get all that in there. So there's a way to get a hold of him. And as far as Diane Diamond is concerned, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram is at Diane Diamond. Twitter is at Di Diamond. What else are we missing here, and what else you got coming up?
My website, just dianediamond.com. You can call me there or write me there. You can read
I don't think you want anybody calling you there.
No, don't call me. I'm busy. And it's almost, isn't it cocktail hour yet?
Yes, it
yeah.
is, as a matter of fact.
yet.
It's a Friday live show and it's cocktail hour. And I also wanted to point out that next time on Fridays, I have to keep telling people, it is always Hawaiian Shirt Friday. And
I didn't know.
No. It's the show.
Now we know.
We haven't gone there yet. So we'll do all that and we'll get everybody else. Everybody hang tight for just a couple of minutes. I'm going to go ahead and close things out. I'll be right back. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, LA. Thank you, John. We're going to do this again. You are all wonderful people and great friends. And yeah, by the way, John, what the hell does this mean anyway?
Hang tight.
Shaka,
What
sending
does
you
it
love,
mean?
brother.
Okay.
It's like a very, it's a greeting. It's a Hawaiian thing. It's a surfer thing. It's like, hey, brother, how you doing, man? We love
Good.
you type of thing.
No worries. I just wanted to make sure because I'm a guy sitting on the mainland, so I wanted to be sure.
Well,
next
if you
time
change the fingers around or eliminate the fingers or reposition, it means something else in New York.
No,
Completely
if you change the fingers around, you're an elected official in Washington, D.C., but that's another story altogether. Thanks, guys, so much. Make sure
Good
everybody
hanging,
go ahead and
guys.
visit everybody here, okay?
Thanks.
Reminder
Nice.
once
All right.
again, we
Nice to
do
be
this
here.
show now live across all social media. It is on Tuesdays and Fridays. Make sure that you go ahead to welcometothearena.com, where you can see all of the shows that we have done, and you can get a hold of me on social media as well. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, LA. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and thank you, everybody, for downloading across the podcast universe. I'm Ed Berliner. Until we meet again, rock on, true believers. See ya!
You're still here?
Are you not entertained?
It's over.
All right, hey. All right, good job, guys. Let's just not come in tomorrow. Let's just take a day.
Go home.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Go.
That's all, folks.